on his day, he is up there, and you think, phew, but then he has too many other days where would he get in Leicester's team? Hello there, welcome to another edition of Shootout, brought to you with the all-new Nissan Rogue, redefined, redesigned. With me to debate all of soccer's top stories, as usual, live from Toronto, my good friend Greg Brady, who I no doubt enjoyed the intrigue of that last Premier League weekend, Greg.
Well, we learned a bunch of stuff, Steve. We're still waiting on a few things. We are waiting. Last week's debate hung heavy on my shoulders. We're waiting for Pep to prove he can, put one over on Jose. We're waiting for that invite from Ryan Reynolds when fans and crowds can come back to the Wrexham home debut. I haven't seen anything in my email box. Have you?
Not yet, but I'm assured it's on its way because for grassroots football, that is great news, the prospect of playing in front of supporters. And since Ryan Reynolds and that Hollywood takeover of Wrexham, they've won both matches. So we'll keep our eye on that particular story. But first up on this week's Shootout, this is the question brought to you with the all-new Nissan Rogue, redesigned, redefined. Who are the more serious title challengers, Chelsea or Spurs? What do you think, Greg?
You remember, I liked both these teams at the start of the season, had both of them in the top four. No Man United in the top five. I was worried a bit about that. I'm kind of switching my allegiance here, Steve. The one thing we said about Chelsea, and I think we agreed on, they might be a year away. I'm still leaning more that Chelsea might be a year away, and now might be the time for the quote-unquote other London squad, Spurs, to step up and be more of a threat to what Liverpool holds right now. What do you think?
Now, of course, they go head-to-head in this magnificent game on DAZN at the Bridge this weekend, which will tell us even more about their credentials. It's a big question still. Can they get above Liverpool? And you're right, they both could, and they are both well on course for those top four finishes. And Tottenham have a lot of credentials, and we've talked about this, and we know that your bromance with Jose Mourinho will continue, Greg. So I'm obviously going to go just the other way, and you'll probably accuse me of the same with Frank Lampard, but I will go Chelsea. When you say year area, I think before a ball was kicked, we'd all agree. I did say to you on this show, let's see when that transfer window closes, the first time that Frank has been allowed to add to his squad, let's have a look at the business. And I think when you look at the business, they've all hit the ground running, probably bar Kai Havertz. I think he's trying to still find his feet, and Frank's still trying to find his role. I think if he sticks with that 4-3-3 system, I think we saw at Newcastle at the weekend with Kante outstanding, with the attacking players they've got and the defensive reinforcements, which I'll come to in a moment. I think Chelsea could have a solid and consistent look that could go very close, Greg.
There's a lot to love about Chelsea. They're a stock to buy going into the next half decade, maybe more so than any other squad in the Premier League. But we're talking about 2020 and 2021. And there's something a little special. Title contenders kind of stake their claim early on. You get that feeling about them. They have that it factor. And right now, that is very much Spurs for me. We talked about the notion that maybe they get pushed around a little bit in the past. Maybe they're a bit of a soft team. They don't play well physically. They don't play well, in those rainy, mucky games where you have to get a goal or you have to protect a lead even. They're not giving any quarter right now. I'm so impressed by some of the individual performances. Eric Dyer is playing, to me, the best football of his career. Højbjerg, sometimes in for big chunks of matches, the best player on the pitch. And given that he's got Kane on his team and Son on his team and Eric Dyer, who I mentioned, really, really impressive. And the ever-reliable Hugo Lloris in net. So all I know is we've got an unusual season. We've got contenders. We've got at least 4 title contenders. And maybe coming in, we thought we just had the 2, Liverpool and Man City. So we've got a lot more wide open April and May to look forward to on DAZN.
You're right, he has recruited well as well, but so too has Frank Lampard. And as I say, all of his signings really have, quicker than most expected, knitted in and fitted in. In fact, Mendy, the goalkeeper, 7 clean sheets in 9 games. I know there'll be sterner tests ahead, but they really have, with the experience of Thiago Silva, the emergence of Reece James, and look how well Zuma's playing alongside Thiago Silva as well. Rudiger has come back off the naughty step, if you like, renewed and reinvigorated as well. They have a much more solid look about it. And I've been so impressed with the way that Frank Lampard has dealt with the goalkeeper situation, the discipline, the issues with Kepa. He's obviously lent heavily. He told me he lent heavily on the knowledge of Petr Cech, who rated Mendy very, very highly indeed, who looks like a goalkeeper if you understand me, Greg, who just gets the job done, doesn't look for that showbiz save or that mighty kick, perhaps like Jordan Pickford's accused of at times. He just gets the job done, keeps the ball out of the net. And with that kind of foundation, Chelsea might just have a sniff of the big one.
Put it this way, both teams probably we thought might be better in the second half than the first half because of some of the chop and change. They're having great first half. So that's a big warning sign to the big boys, Liverpool and Man City, that Chelsea and Spurs are playing so well, not even 10, 11 games in.
Absolutely. And with Harry Kane at the moment, arguably the most informed, confident player in Europe, let alone the Premier League. But when Jose goes back to the bridge, it is always worth watching anyway. But this weekend on DAZN, Chelsea against Spurs looks a real feast. You can join me with Michael Owen and a man who managed both, Glenn Hoddle, this weekend only on DAZN. This is certainly a topical question. 5 substitutes in the Premier League, right or wrong? Now, Greg, this is a question that is being asked in many a meeting room, many a Zoom call at the moment, and it is right on the edge of everybody's lips. What do you think?
Well, Steve, I mean, this is a subject close and near and dear to my heart because when I played high school soccer, we needed 9 or 10 substitutes to get me into the match. So anyway, but I would say this. I think you got to go with a democracy. That's what the Premier League is. And the vast majority of teams decided, or at least a slight majority of teams decided, no, keep it with 3 substitutions. And now the big boys aren't playing by the democracy. I'm hearing Jurgen Klopp. I'm hearing Pep Guardiola raise their complaints. The complaints are about the schedule. And I get it. If you're playing in Europe and you're traveling back late on a Wednesday night and you're scheduled to play Saturday at 12:30 UK time, I agree. Unfair. But there's something that can be done about that doesn't affect the integrity of every single match. We know this benefits the big clubs. So I'm more keep it at 3 because that's what the majority of clubs wanted.
Well, I must admit I've changed my mind on this, and I believe a lot of the clubs have since that meeting that you're talking about. And that is purely down to the welfare and the well-being of players. The level they're playing at now, the speed in which the games are being played, the intensity of which the games are being played, whether you've got a 35-man squad or a 12-man squad, at times is irrelevant because quite simply, Greg, like I say, I've changed my mind on this now. We enjoy the Premier League product, the best league in the world, the best managers in the world, the best players in the world, and we drink it in every single weekend. And we don't really want that to be tapered through unnecessary avenues. We know the whole world is different at the moment. We know that times have had to change. And I think in this particular area, the Premier League has to change a little bit as well. Purely when you see players like Alexander-Arnold, for instance, off the top of my head at Manchester City, go down with a muscle injury. With Alderweireld going down at the weekend against Manchester City for Spurs, having played 3 games for Belgium. Because you're right, it is the Champions League and Europa League, but it's also the international calendar they've had to factor in. I know that doesn't come around until March now. But listen, we all love it. We all want to see the best players playing for the best managers at their best, not limping way through, not having to miss games because they physically are being told by the sports science department that they cannot recover and it's not safe to play.
Well, you make great points, but I guess I see it this way. There's a purity to playing with 3 substitutions. And I look and I say, your points are about fatigue. They're about overscheduling. They're about too many fixtures. And yes, in this COVID world, they're having to cram matches in. I just think it's something where I'm sure the smaller clubs, if they could speak up, and again, they should get a voice. Every voice should count for 1 of 20 in the Premier League. And some of those smaller clubs, the Fulhams and the West Broms and the Sheffields, might find it a little rich to hear the Liverpools and the Man Cities complaining about not being able to use a 5th sub. And I worry that if we go that way, it stays that way. And so it's sort of a careful what you wish for principle. You laid it out there. A lot of it's been fatigue, but take even the Virgil van Dijk injury. That's almost like a fluke accident. It really doesn't matter what time of the match or how many days or weeks off Virgil van Dijk had before that, right?
Yeah, I get that one. That I wasn't listing that one in terms of that. That's a very unfortunate impact injury that can happen no matter how many substitutes or how many games in how many months we have. But I was glancing at January the other day from our work schedule. There's 2 midweek rounds of games in January with 2 rounds of the FA Cup as well. We have to remember that the footballing calendar is 5 weeks shorter this summer. The so-called smaller clubs have to have a voice. Of course they do. If I was the manager of Burnley, I'd be voicing it as well. But I'd also be listening realistically, with no disrespect to those players, that Sean Dyche, for instance, hasn't got an awful lot travelling around the world in international weeks, like the elite Champions League, Europa League challenging clubs. So it's all relative at times. They all have 25 names on a squad list. And I think when we're getting, like I say, the players' welfare has to come first. The last thing I want, believe me, and that's not just when I'm calling a game and having to scribble a lot of names down. That isn't being personal. The last thing I want is a situation where we had under Svenja and Eriksson, for instance, when England used to play friendly internationals and there were 8, 9, 10 substitutes coming on and just devaluing the game. That none of us want that. None of us want that. And I think even in that short period where we had 5 substitutions, a lot of them, 2 or 3 of them were coming on for the last 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, which is the red zone where those sports scientists will tell you they're at the most vulnerable for suffering those muscle injuries. That, as I keep saying, all us Premier League fans around the world will miss seeing, whether it's your De Bruyne's or your Salah's or your top players. We want to see them, and we want to see them in the right condition.
But I think it's interesting because the Champions League and Europa League have allowed the 5 subs. So that's my argument from a younger club. You get that flexibility there. You get that, ability if you're in a dead rubber, and there's going to be a few of these come near the end of the Champions League for a couple of the English clubs because they've started off so well. So, play your second squad, use the 5 subs, take your stars off when you're up 2-0, 75 minutes in and you're playing one of the minnows. But when you come around to play our club on Saturday, if it's a Fulham or a Leeds or an Everton, and you don't have European responsibilities, things end up being a little different. That's, again, the managers knew the rules going in. So I think it's fine to reassess even in May and June, to look into next season, especially given where we might be, not just with the league and the Premier League, but planet Earth. And we might decide that it's the right thing to do, or we go back to the tradition of 3 substitutes.
Okay, well, this is a much talked about subject. We will wait with bated breath to see if we remain with 3 or go to 5 substitutes in the Premier League. Our next question is brought to you by Guinness Game Week. And actually, before I ask that question, the more important one is, you must love a drop of Guinness, Greg.
Oh, we're getting towards the Christmas holidays. I'm feeling festive. There's going to be Boxing Day football on DAZN. But I'm telling you, Steve, I'm getting tired of drinking alone. I mean, we've been working on this show for 4 months, and we can't have our first pint yet. But when we don't have to socially distance anymore, the Guinness is on me, the very first one.
Fantastic. I will hold you to that. We're recording, and I will very much look forward to that and use it as a very personal Christmas present. Now, the secondary question. Anthony Martial at Manchester United. Has he been a success or a failure?
I think Martial's had a successful start at Manchester United, but there's still more of this book to write. I think this guy has a future there, but I wasn't impressed by his game on the weekend. But here's the problem. I wasn't impressed by Marcus Rashford. Outside of the penalty, I wasn't impressed by Fernandes. I'm not impressed by a lot of what Man United's doing right now. And I think Martial, off a 3-game suspension, I think there's a lot of wiggle room there to see him play his best football once again, like he did many times last year. What do you think?
Well, you say many times, and he's been a little bit, in terms of a book, he's had a good chapter and then a couple of disappointing chapters that makes you want to put the book down. And then you get a paragraph or 2 and you carry on reading. Yes, you're right, at the moment and in the last 12, 18 months, maybe even more if you go back to Jose Mourinho's ending spell, he's been in an inconsistent group. Given. However, 24 years of age now, he burst onto the scene. You may remember against Liverpool. Brilliant. What a signing, Louis van Gaal. And they paid a lot of money, by the way, to Monaco, over £50 million for Anthony Martial. So you have to say, you give him time. We heard at the time that he, like Thierry Henry, eventually wanted to play down the middle. And one of the most significant moves that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a profound striker, of course, in his day and finishing, has made, really, to give Anthony Martial the number 9 shirt and play him predominantly as a number 9. And let's point this out. 17 goals in a up and down season last season for Anthony Martial. His best return was a positive. So just when people like myself and people who've played the game far better than me were being convinced to a point about Anthony Martial, we come into this season and he hasn't scored a league goal. In fact, I think he's gone 7 games without scoring. You mentioned the red card. Yes, that was a disruption. But there's more to that, Greg. Analyse his body language. Analyse where he's moving. Analyse if he's in the penalty area when those crosses do come in. Does he have that conviction? Has he pushed on from those 17 goals? No. Instead of Bruno Fernandes, the number 9, the central striker, needs to drive that team on.
Yeah, it does feel like it's a process. And I wonder if Solskjaer, being a former striker as you lay out and being surrounded by phenomenal Manchester United infrastructure, I mean, he followed some legends. Some legends came in after Solskjaer was there. But I wonder if he knows the life of a striker. It's very much feast or famine. You know, I'm not comparing him to Thierry Henry, the great Thierry Henry, who we talked about maybe being the best player in Premier League history, let alone maybe the best striker. I know Alan Shearer watches the show. I'm well aware of who said Shearer and who said Henry. I'm not going to get you in this close to Christmas. I'm not going to get you in trouble with Alan Shearer. I can live with the trouble. But I'd say this, Aubameyang's having to do something at Arsenal that Henry never even had to do, and that's provide all the offense himself. What about Greenwood? We talked about Greenwood in the offseasons as maybe elbowing Martial out of the way. So there's a lot of competition. There's almost too many cooks in the kitchen. So, look, Martial would look amazing in another uniform, and it's tempting to say, oh, you know, are we cutting our losses here? But this is still a fantastic player, and I want to see him play minutes. Steve, he scored a goal every 155 minutes last year. Mo Salah, 151. Sadio Mane, 152. So maybe it's about reps and playing time and doing the lifting for Anthony Martial. But if it's in, out, chop, change, and the lineup varies from time to time, I'm seeing a lot of that with Man United, that none of these guys get settled and get consistent. And that's a problem.
Forget the other components for a moment. Answer me this question, Greg. Can Manchester United win a Premier League title as Anthony Martial, their very main number 1 centre forward? Does he take you to the Premier League title?
No, he does not. He does not. But is the alternative far worse? Is the alternative and cutting bait and watching him succeed somewhere else and raise somebody else's ship up into the top 10 or into Europe? But I think Solskjaer's got to be very, very cautious here about where he goes and where he doesn't go with committing and decommitting from players.
I agree. But so if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer makes Anthony Martial available for transfer in January, what clubs are coming in for him, Greg, at the moment? Who wants to sign Anthony Martial? Top clubs, I'm talking about, trying to win titles and medals.
You could see a Leicester, to me, pair him with Jamie Vardy up front.
Yeah, but I'm talking a Paris Saint-Germain knocking, a Juventus knocking, a Bayern Munich knocking, a Barcelona.
But you're saying they won't. You don't like. You're saying he's B+ level as opposed to an A or A+ level, and won't take you somewhere.
Consistency, yes.
Yeah.
On his day, he is up there, and you think, phew, he's Benzema. He could play for Real Madrid. But then he has too many other days where, would he get in Leicester's team? That's the issue at the moment. And yes, it's a team issue for Manchester United. But what I'm saying to you is, you cannot hang your hat on Anthony Martial. If Manchester United play badly, get one chance, that don't worry, it's Martial. He's going to win you the game. You've got to have a guy at the top of the pitch with getting goals that gives you a chance. Whether it's Vardy for Leicester, whether it's Kane for Tottenham. That's why we think Tottenham might win the league. They've got Harry Kane and Son. Chelsea have got Werner. Liverpool have got the front 3. City have got Aguero, Jesus. Nobody's saying, oh, it might be Man United. They've got Anthony Martial. But we'll see. Next up, of course, for United, Southampton away on Sunday at St Mary's. As always, the only place you can see that and Anthony Martial is on DAZN.